This is Capital Games Movie Club. I am the Wiz.
And I'm Zero.
Zero, we decided last week that we're going to watch something that I think you've already seen, but I've been dying to see for a long time, and you just gave me the excuse to do it. And that is 1994's Wong Kar-Wai film, Chungking Express, starring Tony Leung, Brigitte Lin, Faye Wong, and Takeshi Kaneshiro. Oh my god, I think I just murdered his name. Oh, man.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, both Takeshi Kaneshiro and Faye Wong have had involvement in video games. Faye Wong, most people know her from doing the Eyes on You song from Final Fantasy VIII. And many people probably don't realize this, but Kaneshiro Takeshi, he is actually the voice of Samanosuke for the Onimusha games.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Huh. All right, that's cool. Well, the Japanese, is he Japanese, or I know this is set in
Kaneshiro Takeshi, he's actually half Taiwanese, half Japanese.
Okay, because I know this is set in Taiwan, but
no, Hong Kong.
Hong Kong. Jesus Christ! Oh my lord! Can you tell I haven't been outside of the U.S.?
Well, I don't blame you, mostly because I had a Cantonese girlfriend who, when she had went over to go see family, we would always have video calls and stuff like that. So she would kind of show me sort of like the sights and sounds of Hong Kong and stuff. So a lot of that imagery has been burned into my mind. And then, of course, since her family spoke Cantonese, and that's most of the language in the movie, with some bits of Mandarin, some bits of Japanese in there, it was just like, yep, this is just Hong Kong back in the 90s and 2000s. This is prime Hong Kong right here.
I only mentioned those. You mentioned those two about video games. What I was going to say is, in Asian countries, it's not a step down, I think, for those type of actors to go work in video games. Whereas right now, if you're a really famous film actor, like if you're a Brad Pitt or something, it is considered a step down if you were to go from big budget movies to then do either TV or to like video games. So I think in the Asian countries, they're more amiable to it than they are in the Western countries. So am I correct on that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just kind of seen as a, hey, they're doing something in video games, or hey, they're releasing a drama CD, and people kind of go, oh, that's super neat. Typically in Asia, so it's definitely not quite looked down on as much as that sort of stuff is looked down on in the West, unfortunately.
Yeah. So let's get a little into the history of Chungking Express before we get to the review. Chungking Express, I don't know how popular it was in the Asian territories, but this movie didn't come out into here in the United States and into the West and other countries until Miramax decided to do a kind of... They decided to release DVDs with the moniker of Quentin Tarantino Presents. This was after Quentin Tarantino made it huge with Pulp Fiction, and people wanted to know more about this director that just exploded on the scene. And Miramax did this thing with DVDs called, like I said, Quentin Tarantino Presents, where he would take movies that he was inspired by or he actually really liked and give them a release in the States. And Chungking Express was one of those movies, which is what introduced it to a lot of people in the States that gave it a shot and ended up actually really enjoying the movie when it came out. This is how it started in the U.S., at least, to get some prominence to a certain extent. It also later was released in the Criterion Collection at some point. It's out of print now. But it's also has some runs, some small runs in the theaters around here, too. When was the first time that you heard about Chungking Express?
Probably back, I want to say, in 2006 when I was dating my ex-girlfriend, Tiffany. She was a big Hong Kong cinema nerd, so this was one of the, I guess you could say, almost required watchings that I had to go through. And of course, I saw the summary. It was like, oh, well, these are are like romance stories that have like a little bit of crime and a little bit of comedy and drama, and of course, just back then, just I didn't really have the appreciation that I do now. Before watching the movie, I was just like, oh god, just this doesn't seem fun for me, because I mean, I'm not gonna lie about it. Before I became sort of a Asian art house movie fan, I was your typical red-blooded American movie fan. Action movies, hell yeah, that was kind of how I was. But yeah, just I remember when this was one of the movies to watch after I'd watched Infernal Affairs. I was like, oh god, why?
Yeah.
And then of course get through it. I'm just like, damn, that's actually a pretty freaking good movie.
Yeah. Yeah. I mentioned how I found out about it and everything. And this is just one of these movies that I've wanted to watch, even after I got over the whole subtitles thing. Like, even though I make fun of people who are like, oh, it's got subtitles, I don't want to read my movie. There was a small period of time in high school where I was kind of like that. And it wasn't until I saw 8.5 where I was like, oh shit, there's some really interesting stuff that you can get from foreign language films. So once I broke that seal, then I went crazy. But I just never got to watch Chungking Express. One reason is because the Blockbusters and the rental stores that I had here at the time never had it. They would only rent one copy, and it would always be gone. I mean, always be gone. I'm talking like years later. I would go into the foreign language section and go, oh, let me see if they have Chungking. Nope, they don't have Chungking Express. Jesus Christ. I'm talking years, dude. Years. But, yeah, I never got the chance to see it. And then the curse of having all these services that gives you all sorts of options is that when you have so many options, you kind of are... I guess frozen by the amount of options you have. So it always turned into, oh, I could watch Chungking Express, but I kind of want to watch this instead. So I guess I'm saying if it wasn't for you, beelining me into this, I probably would have still never watched it. But okay, so let's get into it. Let's get into our thoughts on the 1994 romance crime drama Chungking Express, starring Tony Leung, Brigitte Lin, Faye Wong, and is it Kaneshiro Takeshi? Because it shows on Google the opposite.
Well, I mean, as it is, typically in Asian languages, it's last name first, but
Okay.
But yeah, we can just call him Takeshi Kaneshiro,
Okay.
and that's perfectly fine.
Okay. Yeah, so let's just get into the film itself. You've already seen the film, and you liked it beforehand.
Yeah.
Why don't we talk about your second viewing of the film and your thoughts with what you got? Do you still feel the same about it that you did before? And what new things did you pick up on from the second viewing?
My love for this film still remains. It's kind of just a giant mishmash of genres, because I mean, you've got the romance element, you've got the crime element in the first half of the movie, and then you've got sort of a comedy drama thing towards the latter half of the first movie, or the first story in the movie, and then there's a lot of comedy towards the second half of the movie as well too. Mm-hmm. So it was just kind of like, wow, just didn't think you could blend so many genres into a movie and still kind of have it come off feeling pretty good, because usually when movies get overambitious, sometimes they can kind of lose what they're trying to show the audience and everything. And for me, that was kind of interesting to just see it many, many years later and then just go, wow, just this movie still feels great. It doesn't feel like it's overambitious and it's reaching or anything.
Right.
But yeah, just overall, just still love it and everything.
You mentioned the blending, or you just said the mishmash. Would you call it a blend of different genres, or is it more of a? How would you describe how the genres are mixed in?
the best word that I can sum up for it, and also kind of sums up the movie, is there's a lot of chaos. There's a lot of chaos because, of course, I mean, when the movie starts off, it starts off like a crime movie. So, of course, you're expecting something kind of pulpy and everything, and it's just like, okay, just you've got a detective who. Or rather a police officer who's going off on how he's just trying to get his one big break and everything. And then as you kind of progress through the movie, Hazy Woo is the officer in the first half of the movie who Kaneshiro-san plays. Of course, he's kind of lamenting that his girlfriend broke up with him. So you're just like, okay, now we're getting to the romance stuff and everything, and then of course just you get to like kind of the second half of the movie, and then you've got this like really hilarious comedic sequence between the police officer that's played by Tony Leung and the restaurant worker played by Faye Wong that's conveniently named Faye. Mm-hmm. And you've got this whole comedy thing going, but there's also like some drama involved in that story too. And it's just like, wow, it's just kind of interesting seeing these genres sort of blend together and everything. But at the same time, it's also so chaotic.
Yeah, it was something that really intrigued me when I was watching this movie, is not just the blend of the different types of genres that they had throughout, but I guess the different types of personalities they had throughout the entire film. That usually in most films, there's a grounding of a certain type of, I guess, motif or a theme that they would have in the film. And it just, they don't seem to have that grounding in to a certain extent. Now, I would say that might be the grounding of the fact that everything feels so random and chaotic. Well, random is, I don't think, the right word. I guess you said it best, chaotic. But it is strange to me that the film doesn't seem to have something to attach to a certain extent. Do you agree to it, or is there something in the film that grabs you throughout that I guess I'm missing out on this?
I think it's just kind of the chaotic, the chaotic hustle and bustle of just 90s Hong Kong and everything. It just seems to be sort of one of the central pillars that ties the movie together. In my opinion, it's also kind of seen with the choice of cinematography that Wong Kar-Wai uses throughout the movie. In particular, the cinematography effect of just sort of like the juddery frame animation sort of thing that goes on during like some of the crime scene events and stuff like that, and then just of course the framing of some of the scenes where just you see like just populated markets of people just walking through very, very crowded markets, people sort of sitting in the middle of like market alleys just eating meals and stuff like that. There just seems to be just this central pillar of chaos that sort of brings the movie together.
The changing of speeds in certain scenes is something that we also saw in the Grandmaster at certain points, correct?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess I shouldn't have been surprised that I saw that change of speed again in this, but I guess it's his trademark. I'm not really too familiar with Wong Kar-Wai and his filmography. This is like the second film I've seen of his, so like when I saw it, I was like, oh, this again. Okay. Okay, I guess let's get into specifics in regards to the movie. Let's get into performances in this. I do like the performances in this. I will say that the strong ones are clearly Faye Wong and Tony Leung in this movie, and that I came across more annoyed by Takeshi, Kaneshiro, and Brigitte Lin in this. Though, to be fair to Brigitte Lin, the performance was literally be stone-faced throughout the entire time of the movie. Like, to show zero emotion throughout. So I guess that was kind of the point in that. When it comes to performances, I definitely like Tony Leung in this, but I came away really liking Faye Wong. I don't know if the character of Faye was written specifically with Faye Wong in mind, but it definitely felt like it. Because it was such a a chaotic, not a chaotic character, but there is a specificness to this character and the way that she performs it that either she is a much more talented actress than I'm giving her credit, or Wong Kar-Wai wrote this character with her specifically in mind. What are your favorite performances, and what do you think of?
Tony Leung is definitely high up there.
Yes.
And really, I mean, it's like I said before we had started the podcast and everything, just he always plays the straight-laced police officer so well. It is just one of the roles that just he fits in so well. I think the only time he's kind of gone against the grain on that, in at least recent memory for me, is Infernal Affairs, where just he ends up being the undercover cop who's losing his mind. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, he sort of plays the bad guy in Shang-Chi and the Ten Rings and everything.
Yeah,
so
he was actually very good at it, actually.
Yeah, and even though those weren't the usual straight-laced hero roles, just he played those roles pretty well too. So yeah, just to kind of see him in the early days of his acting and him playing kind of like a straight-laced police officer in Chungking Express, it was just like, yep, another great performance by Tony Leung. And then Faye Wong, she's a treasure.
Yeah.
She's just absolutely fun and silly as hell in this movie. And of course, it gets into spoiler territory, but yeah, just all the silly stuff that she does towards the second half of the movie, covering the story between her character and Tony Leung's character. It's just absolutely silly stuff. Yeah. And could not get enough of it. It was like, oh, damn it. I know this movie is coming to a close, but damn it, I loved all the silly antics.
Yeah. We'll definitely get into spoilers with Faye Wong and the character Faye in this, because I think there's a lot that go over with that specifically. But yeah, I do agree. Like, of any character, I was charmed by Faye Wong in this movie, and Faye in this. With Tony Leung, you're right. Like, I'm used to him being very stone-faced. Not stone-faced. I keep using that. Very straight-laced in this. But even though he is that character in this, he shows a lot of emotion in this movie that is very effective in certain scenes. So I came off a bit surprised by that, even though I know he's a talented actor. But just that he had that kind of warmth to him, even though he is meant to be very rigid in this performance, which it is. So I liked it. I liked that performance too in this. Let's get to now. These two are part of the second story in the movie. Let's go to the first, which is Takeshi Kaneshiro and Brigitte Lin. I came off annoyed by Takeshi Kaneshiro in this movie. I don't know if this is because of the writing or if it's because of the performance, but I became incredibly annoyed by, I guess the character Hikwa Yu? Is that the
Hey Ziwu, ZHIWU. Don't worry. I was gonna say, don't worry about it. It's a Taiwanese style name, so I've gotten used to pronouncing a lot of Taiwanese names and stuff like that.
Okay, I can barely do English, so yeah. Either his character or his performance came off as whiny and just like, I get it's lovelorn, and it's supposed to be a performance that is hurt by the fact that he lost his lover of his longtime lover at this point. There's a point where you have to make it endearing and almost identifiable. And I think this might have a little more to do with the writing of the character than it is to his performance. The character and the way he performed it just came off more grating than it was really, to me at least. It came off grating than it really came off as someone that I could identify with and I would want to root for and I would want to be happy with. Like, I guess the best way to put it was, I couldn't wait to get rid of this character. Like, I could not stand him after a certain point in this. Well, that's a little harsh. But yeah, I was actually quite happy when his story was over. Because if I had to deal with him for a whole movie, I think it would have been a painful experience for me.
The character of Ziwu, definitely wasn't my favorite, mostly because it just I get that he was very hurt that May sort of dumped him and everything, but at the same time it was just like I I kind of sympathize with the owner of the Midnight Express restaurant of, dude, get over her, man. Just there are plenty of women out there. Just you gotta stake your claim and make a move. You can't, just sit there and hope and pray and wish that May's gonna come back to you. Because just every time he would go to the Midnight Express restaurant to like get some food, get like a soda or something, the owner of the restaurant would just be like, dude, you look like crap, man. Why are you pining for her? She's not coming back, dude. And she's not going to call you and say, she's not going to wish you a happy birthday. So, that's wishful thinking, man. Just get over it. And that was just kind of how I felt about the character and everything. And though towards the end, I mean, his character gets into a bit of a comedic situation with Brigitte Lin, but at that point, it's almost kind of a setup for like the second story.
No, I guess let's get into Brigitte Lin's performance. Like I mentioned, it's hard to actually fault her performance in this because the character is meant to be a complete blank slate in this. So on the one hand, I kind of feel it's unfair to a certain extent to criticize her because the character she was given, she did a good job with, to a certain extent. But part of the story is for you to sympathize and to, I guess, identify with her. It's kind of hard to identify with somebody who is a drug trafficker who shows no emotion, is generally abusive towards a lot of people. And they give you nothing really to identify with in this character, other than the fact that she is cold, she's hard-bitten, and probably for good reason. And she is just somebody who does not emote to anybody in this. So I think that might be much more of a fault of the writing in this than anything else. But I guess the first story total, like the first story entirely, was a turnoff to me completely. Brigitte Lin, is there anything you want to add to her performance, really?
She came off as kind of a very, very cold and bitter drug runner, and when the deal goes sour and everything, just she really gets into the whole bitterness of just things going completely screwed up. Yeah. So, since she's not really given a name, the movie doesn't really get into her personal life or her personal trappings or anything. The most that you know about the blonde wigged woman was just the fact that she's a drug runner. That's really it. And I mean, you get to see a little bit of her personality quirks sort of shine towards the end of the first half of the movie. But again, I think that's more sort of the setup to the more lighthearted story for the second half of the movie.
So let's get into the writing in this. And the way the movie is structured is that there's two plot lines. There's the first plot line with the plainclothes officer, Takeshi Kaneshiro, and what they call the woman in the blonde wig, which is Brigitte Lin. And then there is a larger plot line involving Cop 663, which is Tony Leung, and Faye, played by Faye Wong. Most movies, when they do these multiple plot line structures, where not only are different things are happening in a movie, but there's two different movies happening at the same time, they find a way to mix them together in a certain extent, either thematically or in location-wise or as something, to attach themselves together to give a good reason as to why these two stories are married together. And I think this was a big problem I had with the film, because I really felt that having both plot lines together did nothing for the movie. That might also have to do with the fact that I did not like the first part of the movie at all. I came away with going, I'm glad that's over. Whereas with the second one, I actually was liking what I was watching to a certain extent, even though I felt it felt half-baked. I guess with the writing, when it comes to the structure, I had a big problem. There are themes that they both stick with. I guess both being two love-struck men who lost their lovers and are both struggling with the identity of who they are. I get that to a certain extent, and that's the connection to a certain extent. And then the shop is another connection that I guess binds them together at a certain extent. But I sat after the end of the movie going, why did the first part of the movie need to be done like that? Why didn't we get, I guess my thought was, why couldn't we just have a whole movie with Tony Leung and Faye Wong instead?
Yeah, I'm with you. Even when I first watched it and then rewatching it again now, the first half of the movie is definitely the weakest. And it's just such a shame because just when the second half starts, it's just so much fun. Even though it's not perfect, I mean, it's got its quirks and its flaws in the second half too. But yeah, just the first half is just so weak.
Yeah, yes, I absolutely agree. And it's, to me, it's just weak because I don't have anyone, not that I don't have anyone to root for, or I don't have anyone that I want to identify with, and I don't have anybody that I find that interesting in this. Like I said, the woman in the blonde wig is clearly a drug runner and shows nothing other than what she's doing. And then with Takeshi Kaneshiro's character, you just have somebody who, to be absolutely honest, is just utterly pathetic in this movie. I hate to say it, because I've been there. I've been in the situation where I'm like, oh man, I'm so heartbroken. I feel like shit. Like, I get that to a certain extent, but he just seems so pathetic in this movie. I'm like, oh, stop, buddy. Holy crap. Like, I can't identify with him very much in this, because I overall find him kind of, not just sad, but kind of pathetic. It's really hard for me to really identify and want to root for somebody that I kind of disdain to a certain extent. It is a little weird to watch that first half be like, I don't like any of these characters. I don't identify with them. I don't want to know what happens to them. I just want it to stop. And the sweet, merciful release, when it does stop, it's just like, okay, great. Another thing, too, did it need to be a crime movie? Like, I guess my main thing is I think they should have just got rid of the first part of the film. That's my feelings on that.
It's just one of those things that just, again, I totally get where Ziwoo's pain's coming from, because I mean, I think most guys have been there. Just, you've got the one girl that you think is going to be with you forever, and then just out of the blue, she's like, nope, I'm done. I'm out. And there's always that moment that you're grasping for that one piece of hope, going, maybe it's just a thing that she just needs a break. Maybe, just things are going to be okay. She's going to come back, and just we'll just pick up where we left off. And just the focus of his obsession, it just kept being drawn out, and it just felt way too drawn out. Especially like his obsession with just going to the convenience store and buying all the canned pineapples that expire on May 1st, because just that's when his ex-girlfriend May's birthday is, and she liked pineapples. And it was just like, dear God, we get it. You miss May. Jesus, just let's move on.
and that kind of obsession, if framed correctly, could be very interesting for a character. But that type of obsession shouldn't be, to me at least, shouldn't be something that is explored sincerely. It should be explored in a way of, oh, this guy's struggling. Oh boy, like there's an issue here. What's gonna happen? Oh boy. Instead, the movie does it in a very sincere, like, oh, poor Takeshi Kaneshiro, look at what he's going through. Oh my God, where I'm sitting here going, God, sack up, for God's sakes. Really? Like, come on. Yep. Like, I don't feel bad for this guy at all. Like, to be fair, again, we've both been through something like this. So to that extent, I get it. In regards to the character itself, I just sat there watching this going, really? Like, this is weird. And for the film to take it seriously is where I was like, this is odd. Like, this is not odd in an endearing way. This is just odd. So yeah. I sat there watching this going, okay, whatever. And I'm just glad it was over. So the second half, actually, so the majority of the movie was with Cop 663, played by Tony Leung, and Faye, played by Faye Wong. And I found this a much more endearing and likable story, though I still think it still had some problems in it. But with the performances, I like Tony Leung in this, but I really like Faye Wong in this movie. But when it comes to the writing, I wish there was much more depth to these characters. And I know that's a problem because the film was structured as a two-storyline movie, and I think that's going to be the thing that really hurts the movie for me in the end, because I really wish I could just see more of these characters than I did in this. And this isn't I love it so much, I want to see more. This was you didn't give me enough here in this. So
it's fun, especially with just sort of the silly shenanigans that Faye gets up to towards the latter half of the second story. But yeah, just unfortunately, I am with you. Just the writing is just a bit on the weak side, and you just want more depth, more detail on the characters in the story, and it's just kind of threadbare. It just almost seems like the central focus is just, hey, we want to focus on just the romance dynamic. We really don't want to get into the nitty-gritty and the characters. We want to focus on sort of like romance, the drama, and the comedy between these two characters, and that's all we really care about. It's just like, but this is such a good story. It would be so much better with a little bit more detail to be fleshed out on it.
Yes, absolutely. So we're going to get more into the writing and spoilers, because there are certain things in the movie that kind of bugged me a little bit. So we'll get into that in spoilers. So let's get into direction here. I am getting the feeling that I am not liking Wong Kar-Wai as a director. And here's why, okay? I read a little bit more after I watched the movie on his thoughts on the movie, and he called this his film student film, or I guess his student film. It was experimental in certain ways. It does different types of things in it, and some find it endearing. I find it annoying. I find it really annoying. And when you mentioned the way the film speeds change in certain aspects, where it becomes a lot more chaotic, and the way that it's shot shows the film in a way where like light beams and the way that the light is shining is distorted in a certain way, I found it highly annoying to deal with. Some films can pull that stuff off when it's done thematically right, but it seems like to a certain extent it was done. It might have been done because of budget constraints to a certain extent, because they couldn't afford to have an elaborate chase sequence to a certain extent. I'm talking about the first scene, the first chase sequence or probably the only chase sequence in the movie, where it was really blurry and the film speed is totally out of whack. And it was meant for effect, but I don't think it was effectively done very well. And then don't get me started on the slowdown. I do not understand his obsession with slowdown. He did it in the Grandmaster too, where he slowed down the speed to a certain extent in certain scenes where it just did not need it. And he does it here too. Like, I don't get it in this. I guess visually the movie's okay, is good, but with the camera tricks and the certain things that he does with editing, it just annoys me to no end when he does it.
They're not great. And that was how I felt initially when I watched the movie back in 2006. And I still feel that way now. Just, it could have been, I mean, if you wanted to illustrate the chaos, there are much better ways to do it. But yeah, it's just really, really not a great way to do it.
Like, it seems more like, isn't it cool we can do this? More than, this is the reason why I'm doing this. This is what I'm trying to portray. This is what I'm trying to actually have you feel when this happens. It doesn't seem like a thematic, there's thematic reasons to why it is. It just seems like a visual flourish. And visual flourishes are fine in moderation, and when it really impacts the scene in a very visually distinctive way. But in no circumstance do I see any of the slowing down, the camera speed changes, and the blurriness. Do I ever feel like it works in this. I just come off going, why? Why are you doing this? This is, you could have done it a different way. So I'm actually kind of nervous for the next movie we're watching now. Because I'm now 0 for 2 with the Wong Kar-Wai films. So we're going to get into spoilers for Chungking Express, the 1994 romance crime drama directed by Wong Kar-Wai. If you have not watched it, you can stop here and come back when you're ready. Let's get into spoilers for Chungking Express in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I don't even want to get into the first part, because I just downright do not like the first part at all. I mean, we can get into, like, is there certain things in the first part that you want to go over real quick? Or not even real quick, to any depth that you want, that you want to talk about? Because to me, it's plainly, I just wish it wasn't there.
Yeah, and I get that. I think really just it's kind of weird thematically, because I mean, starts off as kind of a pulpy crime drama sort of thing. You know, just you've got Officer Ziwoo just trying to get his big break, and then also he's also pining for his ex-girlfriend and everything. And then of course you've got the woman in the blonde wig. She's trying to get a big drug deal done so that, you know, she can maybe try to see about getting out of the game and everything. And of course, naturally, she gets double-crossed by a group of Indians that she was setting up with a whole bunch of drugs hidden in their shoes, their clothes, and everything. And of course, turns out that the barman who was helping set up this drug deal, he was also in on sort of the betrayal shenanigans. And of course, you've got this whole thing where she's trying to hide out and, you know, just try to keep a low profile and try to exact revenge on things. And then of course it gets a bit towards the weird and comedic side when Officer Ziwoo just goes to like a girly bar to go drink and stuff like that. And then he finally, to try to take the advice of the proprietor of the Midnight Express restaurant, and, you know, he's like, all right, first girl that walks in, I'm just gonna try to just hit it off. And then of course, who walks in? The woman with the blonde wig, and he's trying to flirt with her, and then she's just like, dude, I ain't into it. And then he's just like, well, can we just sit and talk? That's all I want. And then of course, both of them get so sloshed, and he's just like, oh shit, bar's closing. Shit. Okay, guess we gotta get a hotel. And then of course, you know, there's probably thinking, all right, maybe we got some sexual shenanigans going on, and nope. You got the woman in the blonde wig completely passed out on the bed. He's ordering a whole bunch of stuff from room service to eat while watching old Chinese movies on the TV. And then it just closes with him just going, yeah, you know, just I feel sorry for her, and she seems like she's been through a lot. Let me get the shoes off of her and shine them up real quick, because I don't want her feet to get swollen and sore. And he's just like, wow, she must have been through some shit, because her shoes are absolutely in terrible condition. And, you know, just kind of leaves her to rest up in the room and everything. He just ends up taking the advice of one of his other friends, who was just like, yeah, you know, when I break up with someone, I just take a jog. So I end up completely out of water in my body that I do not have the ability to cry. And so he goes to the sports park, runs his ass off, and he's just like, man, that was a good run. And then he has kind of like a monologue with himself going, yeah, you know, maybe it's time for me to get over May and, you know, just forget that part of my life. So he clips the beeper to the fence of the sports park, starts walking away. Beeper starts to rattle off with an alert, and he desperately calls up the beeper line, and he's just like, oh my god, is there a message for me? And then the message operator's like, yeah, there's a message for you. The woman in room 702 says happy birthday. And it's just kind of like, he's just like, okay, thanks. And it's just kind of like, well, he got a happy birthday message like he was hoping for, but it wasn't from the woman who's won. And of course, this is where you get to the lead up to the second story, where he's just like, yeah, you know, just I went back to the Midnight Express to, you know, just talk with the owner and stuff. And of course, the owner's like, oh yeah, the girl May that that worked here, yeah, she quit. So, but we got this new girl. She's working. Her name is Faye, and it just bumps into her. And then at that point, he kind of has a monologue again. He's just like, well, it's a bit of a shame because I fell in love with her when I met her, but little would I know that in a few hours she would fall in love with someone else.
I guess I gotta say it again. The first story was just felt unnecessary to me. And the thing that bugged me with the whole scene, the sequence where they go from the bar to the hotel room and everything, is that at no point would I believe that the woman in the blonde wig would in any way would deal with or be interested in the other character. At no point. I'm like, this person doesn't take any shit and has been shown to not take shit for the first half of the film. Suddenly she's gonna deal with this character who not only is pretty inept, but really annoying. And I'm supposed to believe that she's gonna put up with him? Yeah, I don't think so. Like, I don't believe that they got drunk together at this point. Like, I couldn't buy it at that point. So I was like, okay, all right, whatever.
Yeah, and I too took issue with that as well too. It was just like, she's shown that she really isn't interested in romance. Mm-hmm. She's shown as being a very ruthless woman, especially after she gets out of the hotel and decides to go and kill the barman that set up the betrayal and everything. Mm-hmm. She's just a flat out very cold and very ruthless woman, and it's just like, and I'm supposed to believe that she would leave herself so vulnerable that she would get sloshed to the point that she couldn't even stand up, and she would just suddenly go, oh yeah, sure, just drag me up to a hotel room, let me sleep this off. It's just like, I don't really think that's her character, and I take issue with that.
Or that she cared enough for this person that she was clearly annoyed by to give him a happy birthday message, at the very least. Like, if anything, I think she would have been annoyed and just said, oh, fuck it, it's done, it's over, bye. And would have disappeared into the night and nothing would have happened. The fact that she gave him a happy birthday message was like, why? It was like, why would she do this? Like, Yeah, like that first story, burn it. I honestly am like, I don't see it necessary. I really don't find a reason as to why it's there, especially with the themes that it works with. So let's get into the second half of the story, which is the much stronger story in this. It is a nice story. It's fun. I like the two characters involved in it, but I do have issues with this story as well that I think hamper it to a certain extent. And the one thing is that characters aren't given enough time to develop in this. And Faye is portrayed as, I'm going to say this, I think someone's going to get offended by this, just by how I'm going to say it, but this is the best way I can do this. She seems like an anime dream girl to a certain extent. And I know by saying anime, I'm stereotyping to a certain extent because they're all Asian, even though they're not Japanese. I get that, but let me explain this to a certain extent. This girl this woman, I should say, seems to be portrayed as a quirky, kind of pre-Zooey Deschanel magic pixie girl to a certain extent, where she does all these things that a man could ever want, but does it in the background, but is kind of weird and quirky and has this really interesting and odd personality that is really endearing. Now, Faye's character does some weird shit in this movie, and yet I'm not bothered by it that much. I thought it was kind of cute. I thought it was kind of endearing and sweet, even though when you look back at it, you're like, that's not only strange, but illegal? It's like, that's not a good idea, especially to do it to a cop. It's a weird juxtaposition, because on the one hand, I can look at it logically and going, this is weird. This doesn't work. But on the other hand, Faye, the character, and I think the performance by Faye Wong really helps it to be watchable and likable to a certain extent. But I just wish, but I think the key problem is that she's not developed enough in this. Like, this is the one character that could have used a lot of development and a lot of good writing to really make her character very dynamic and interesting. And I get why people love this character too. I just watched this movie and saying, I really like this character, but there's not enough of it. and that really hurts the movie.
It's kind of funny because, I mean, of course, the setup is just Officer 663. He gets broken up with his flight attendant girlfriend and everything. The breakup is real awkward too, because of course his girlfriend just stops by the Midnight Express restaurant. She's like, "Hey, you know, is Cop 663 here? You know, I hear he's usually here when he's on duty and everything." And then of course the proprietor is just like, "No, he's actually off duty today." And then she's like, "Oh, well, in that case, can you give this envelope to him?" And of course, everyone at the Midnight Express restaurant loved gossip, so they're immediately opening up the letter and everything, and just like, "Oh no," they're nosing through his business. "Oh no," and of course, of course, if Faye's curiosity is kind of up because she's seeing everyone just kind of like reading on this letter and everything, and then of course just she reads through it as well too, and then of course notices that there's a set of keys in the envelope, and then after reading it and seeing the keys, she puts them all back and just kind of holds on, has the restaurant hold on to the envelope and everything. And of course, naturally, he comes over to get his coffee from the Midnight Express and everything, and Faye realizes, "Oh, hey, yeah, there's a letter for you from a woman that had some like flight attendant uniform on. So she said to give this to you." And then he's like, "No, just wait a second. Just give it to. You can give it to me after I've had my coffee." And then just finishes the coffee and, you know, doesn't take the envelope. And then later, it's when she's like dragging like heavy baskets of vegetables and stuff. He ends up kind of making like the casual invitation of, "Hey, yeah, you know, just come on by to my house sometime. You know, we'll talk and, you know, we'll talk and hang out and whatever's." And of course, she totally misconstrues that invitation and just takes the keys, and she's just like, well, I've got an idea, and starts playing these hilarious shenanigans of like rearranging decorations in his house, cleaning up his house, and just trying to pretty up the place and everything.
Yeah.
And there's a few times where he and Officer 663 is just like, "You know, I come home and I just got this vibe that my ex-girlfriend's here. Just, I know she's here. I know she's somewhere. I just don't know where she is." And then of course you've got like Faye popping out of closets and stuff, and it's just like, "Oh my god, girl, get out of there, Jesus, he's a cop."
I know. But it's strangely cute and endearing too, because you know there's no malice behind it. There's no like, it is obsession, don't get me wrong, but it is a cute kind of tee-hee, look at me, look at what I'm doing, I don't know what I'm doing, hee-hee. And it's really, it's strangely sweet, and I just wish in this circumstance that we can know more about Faye as to what her thought processes are and why she's doing this, and to what extent is her end goal. Or the end goal is for her to date him. I know that, but there has to be another underpinning thing that's happening in this that's causing her to do these types of weird things in this. And all I get out of it is, oh, she's just weird like that. But that's not good enough. It's really not, like whatever. And then if I were Cop 663, I'd be really weirded out right now. And the fact that he really isn't makes me kind of question how good of a cop he is at certain points.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, what? It's like, what is this? So, yeah, like, my issue with the writing especially in this circumstance, because the second half is the part I like, is that there is not enough meat in them bones. There's just not enough there for me to identify with and to really get a handle of in this. But I love Faye in this movie. And I do like Cop 663. Like, I like those two characters, but I wanted more Faye, and I wanted to know more about Faye and what her thought process was and everything in this movie. But they just didn't do that in this. Here's my thought on this. I mean, at the end of the movie, I immediately started thinking, okay, what could they have done better in this? And I came up with two things. One was to just get rid of the first story and flesh out the second story into its own movie. The other thing is I quite like the location of the Midnight Express, and I like the characters in there. I like Faye, of course, and I like the proprietor in there. I like the owner. Even though he's kind of a one-note character, he's kind of funny. He's kind of enjoyable in his way. What if they rewrote the film, if they wanted to have the multiple storylines? What if they rewrote the film where the main character was that restaurant and the characters were all reacting to what was going on, instead of it being this location just being a kind of interstitial location where the stories just so happen to meet?
I think just more detail overall.
Yeah.
Especially for both Officer 663 and Faye. Just a little bit more detail, because they're very threadbare as characters, and they just don't have enough time to bloom and develop properly into full-blown characters. And it's like I said, it just seems like they want you to be more focused on kind of the romance and the drama and maybe some of the comedy, but it's just like, yeah, these characters, they're just chess pieces on a board. Just pay attention to the dynamics that are going on.
Right.
And for me, it's just like, it just has me in a bit of regret of just wanting more.
But those types of movies where it is a chess piece dynamic kind of thing, they do work, but the dynamic involved has to be just as fleshed out or as interesting. And I don't think it's either in this movie. I just think that, along with a lot of Wong Kar-Wai's direction when it comes visually, I just think it came off as, isn't this cool that? And that's as deep as it got in this. I came away in this movie being very disappointed with the way it was, the way it ended and how everything turned out. And not that everything turned out. I thought that the second story was kind of sweet in the end. I still wanted much more than they were giving. To a certain extent, they just made some really questionable decisions when it came to the storyline and writing and everything.
Again, I just felt the same. I was just like, I just want more of the second story. It pains me so much that characters are threadbare. Hey, you've got this overarching romantic comedy sort of dynamic going on. It gets into a little bit of the soft-hearted drama stuff towards the end of the second half, and then it just kind of closes right when things are starting to get good, and it's like, oh, damn it, what a freaking buzzkill.
Yeah.
Especially when you get to the end where just 663, he finally realizes, oh my god, I really like Faye. I gotta ask her out. And it's kind of funny because just the moment happens after he finally catches her just gallivanting around in his home and everything, and he's just like, what the frick are you doing? This is my home. And then just, of course, she's embarrassed, and of course she's like, oh god, I'm gonna die. God, I screwed up and everything. And then of course he's just kind of sitting eating noodles and stuff like that. He's just like, the house is kind of nice again, and man, I don't know what it is. The sardines I tossed into my noodles taste really good.
Yeah.
And he's just like, oh god, I like Faye. I need to ask her out.
Yeah. It was kind of cute. Yeah.
Yeah, and then of course just this is, and this sequence is where the drama happens, because he's just like, hey, meet me at the bar California for a date and everything. And of course he's just waiting, and then unfortunately he gets stood up. And he gets notified that he got stood up in the worst way. Just Faye's cousin, aka the proprietor of the Midnight Express, he comes up and he has like a letter to deliver to him, and he's just like, I'm sorry, man, she ain't coming. She up and quit the restaurant, and then she just left and flew off to California. And then of course it's just nothing but just sucker punches for like the next while, because of course 663 he goes to the convenience store and everything to kind of maybe get a beer or something, and of course he bumps into his flight attendant ex-girlfriend, and of course she's all like hey man, just you doing all right? And he was like, well, I guess so, and everything. And she's like, yeah, I'm doing all right too. I'm seeing a new guy, and the new guy's like got the total asshole vibe going for him.
Yeah.
And then of course just just he's honking on his scooter for her to hurry the fuck up and everything. And then of course she starts running out of the convenience store, and he's like, yo, you didn't freaking pay for your shit. And she's like, oh well, you'll cover for me, right? And he's like, oh god damn it. And I'm just like, oh dude, that is the freaking worst.
Yeah, but it was kind of sweet, I guess, what happened at the end, that him and Faye, I guess, they got together to a certain extent. It was kind of bittersweet.
Yeah,
but again,
it was kind of cute because kind of what sort of tied the whole thing together was just the letter that he got. Like, his first instinct was just to ditch it in the garbage and everything at the convenience store, and then suddenly you see him run back for the letter. He's trying to dry it out in desperation in like the convenience store's little like snack holder and everything.
Yeah.
And then of course the letter actually ends up being a drawing of a boarding ticket, post-dated 1 whole year later.
Yeah.
And of course, just from there, it gets like an immediately quick cut to kind of Faye's perspective on things. And she was like, yeah, I ended up actually going to the California bar actually a bit late. And I was hoping and thinking maybe he'd show up, but he didn't, and I kind of went on my adventure and everything. And then of course, in another quick immediate cut to her 1 year later, kind of hanging out at the bar California and everything. And she's like, I was hoping to maybe bump into him now sitting at the bar, but he's not here. Maybe he's kind of moved on. And of course her first instinct is to go back to the Midnight Express, which was her cousin's restaurant and everything. And of course, just what awaits her is one hell of a surprise, because she comes in and of course just there's like a whole bunch of like paint and cement and stuff just out in front of this restaurant for what looks like a renovation. And so she sees the metal shutter pulled kind of way down low, and so she's like, what the hell's going on? And of course gets in and she sees Officer 663 just kind of in the restaurant doing stuff in the restaurant. She's like, what in the world are you doing here?
Yeah.
And of course he's like, oh well, yeah, your cousin was just like I want to do something else, and he decided to open a karaoke bar, but he didn't want to close the Midnight Express. So I talked to him about it, and yeah, he was like, actually, how about you run the Midnight Express? And so it's I'm the one who's now running the Midnight Express and everything. And of course they're trying to quickly catch up on what's happened over the year and everything. He's trying to ask her out, but he's kind of trying to do it in kind of a real like half-hearted way. He's like, well, grand opening for the renovated Midnight Express is going to be in 2 days. Can you stay? And she's like, well, I'm going to be flying out soon, so I'm not going to be able to hang out. And then, of course, she then asks him the one big important thing, and she's just like, hey, do you still have, I bet you probably didn't read that letter that I left you. And, of course, just instantly, the minute she asks him that, he runs to the back of the restaurant, pulls the letter that he had been saving for this whole year, and then he's just like, yeah, I got a letter, but it actually was a boarding ticket. And unfortunately, the destination's kind of blurred out. So I wonder if you could help me out on this. She kind of just takes a napkin from the restaurant, starts drawing another boarding pass and everything. And then she was just like, yeah, I can issue you another boarding pass. But the real question is, where do you want to go? And then just 663's response is, wherever you'll take me. And then when it closes, I'm like, damn it, that was when it's getting good, damn it.
Yeah. This is the main problem of the movie, really. There's not enough there to sink your teeth into, and not enough that I can attach myself to. But I think the performances of the two main actors, of Faye Wong and Tony Leung, that makes that story what it is and makes it as good as it is. It's a sweet story, but I just wanted so much more out of it, and we didn't get it anyway. Final thoughts. I will go first. I was really looking forward to seeing Chungking Express after hearing how great of a movie this is, and I got into it, and out of it, I was very disappointed. I thought the first story in the movie was inconsequential and just was unnecessary throughout the entire film. And the second half didn't have enough depth into it to where I think it would really reach a good crescendo. I do like the performances of the two principal actors in the second story, which is Tony Leung and Faye Wong. I especially like Faye Wong, but the writing and the way the characters are written in this are not that in-depth, and because of that, they're not that interesting. So I only had to rely on these good performances to make it as cute and as sweet as it was, and it was, but it wasn't as in-depth as I wanted it to be. And then the directional flourishes of Wong Kar-Wai ended up annoying me to a certain extent. There are some good parts of it that are shot pretty well, but for the most part, I think it just lacks a certain cohesive vision that I really wish that he could just hone down on and decide how he wants to do the shots and everything. Overall, I was disappointed by Chungking Express, and I might come back to it at another point, and I might get more out of it at another viewing. But as of a first viewing, and after watching it, I'm going to give it 2 stars out of 5. I can't recommend it. I do like the second story, but I just don't think there's enough to it. And then to sit through the first story, which was unnecessary, you're asking somebody to watch an hour-and-a-half movie where maybe 30 to 40 minutes of it is not that good. And for that specific reason, on top of the second half not being that in-depth, I can't recommend it. So I'm going to give Chungking Express 2 out of 5.
I can say I'm a little bit more positive, but not by much.
Okay.
Again, just I like the movie. I'm not really much of a fan of kind of the visual flourishes, like the shaky cam stuff that happened during the first part of the movie and everything, and then of course the real weird stilted sort of filming effect that was used in a couple of the scenes to kind of try to illustrate the chaos. I just thought that there could just be better techniques to illustrate the chaos of the crime stuff going on. And again, the first story, it is so weak. It almost just kind of feels like a filler arc for a TV anime, which is really sad because Takeshi Kaneshiro is a really good actor. It really hurts to kind of see him in kind of a really, really weak role. And again, just the whole stone-faced dead seriousness of a woman in the blonde wig played by Brigitte Lin. It starts off just kind of playing strictly to the rules, and then all of a sudden, towards the end of the movie, it's like she completely drops her guard. It isn't gradual, it's just like a sudden boom, just floored, completely dropped out of it. And it was just like, wow, just the first story should have been over with so quickly. And then of course you get to the second half, it's fun, it's silly, there's some push and pull, it's very cute, it's very endearing, like we covered ground on it. Both Tony Leung's character, Officer 663, and Faye Wong's character, Faye, they're just so threadbare. Just, you want to know more about them, but there's just nothing to know about them. And really, the second story is kind of contingent on how strong the performances of both Faye Wong and Tony Leung are. So it's just an absolute shame because the second half just feels so fun, so silly, and so heartfelt. And then just if you're trying to look for more substance and details, it's just not there. If you had to put a numeric score on it, I'd say maybe a 55% for me.
Man, you just change the percentage and the numbers all the time, man. Like it's like, I'm gonna give it 5 out of 10. I'm gonna give it 55%. I'm gonna give it 3 out of 7. Like
yeah, this one's kind of more granular for me. Just, I think really just, it's not an absolutely terrible movie, and the second half redeems it, but at the same time, it's not a terribly strong movie either.
Does it surprise you that it is as beloved as it is?
A little bit. I mean, I can see why some of the Asian cinephiles are just gaga over it and everything, but I mean, as someone who generally just enjoys art house films of all cultures and everything, I think it sort of broke my bias for it and everything. Because, I mean, if you spoke to me years ago when I was still just Asian cinema mostly for most of my art house stuff, yeah, I probably would have been someone who would probably put this roughly at like the 80% mark or something. But just with kind of broadening myself out and kind of trying to explore more art house films of different countries and cultures, just it sort of opened me up, and it sort of softened just some of the bias that I used to have for Asian art house cinema and everything.
I kind of look at this film, it being as popular and as beloved as it is, as, there's always, I have this bias too, to a certain extent, where you see that one film that changes the way you look at, this one thing that changes the way you look at everything else. And it really cements this thought of, oh my God, there's something more to this. I could see how Chungking Express can do that for somebody in this, with the way it's shot and the way they do the stories and everything. But I gotta be honest, if this was made into an American movie, I think it would be pretty standard. To a certain extent, it would be just as threadbare and as annoying and as cloy as a lot of the other romance films that Hollywood does ad nauseum for the past 30 years in this. When it comes to like the characters and everything, it's not that interesting. It's kind of what surprised me in this, is that I look at this and I'm like, and saying like the characters have no depth, and there is some nice there's some camera tricks and there's a visual distinctiveness to it, but when it comes to the meat of it, I don't see anything special about this, and I came off disappointed. And I know it's not a good idea to base your expectations and your feelings on if you like something on what somebody else thinks, because the hype of it will then distort exactly what you think of the product in the end. I just look at this and go, it's kind of like I said, it's kind of like if this was the first type of movie like this that I saw, like this multi-plotline story movie, and this is the first one I saw, that I could see how this could change my mind about a lot of things. But since it's not, and I've seen a lot better, and with much bigger stars and much bigger characters and stuff like that, with more depth, I just look at this movie as horribly lacking and being confused as to where all the love is coming from. So I don't know. I honestly don't know why it's as beloved as it is. But it is, and there is a strong fan base for this, so we'll hear from them. Probably if they So like, oh, you guys don't know what you're talking about. Faye Wong is my dream girl. Like, yeah, okay, cool.